So again, as you know, this is why I do tape, so. All right, so chapter 10 is on how to use forms with data validation. What I'm going to show you next week is I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to just create a very simple form. And I'm going to go and I'm going to show you 3 ways to validate that form. One way we'll use just HTML. One way we'll use just vanilla generic JavaScript. And one will use jQuery. Okay? So you'll see all 3 of them. In this chapter, they talk about just using jQuery. Now, you got to realize, and you're a smart guy, you do. In this book is JavaScript and jQuery, right? So they've given you a little bit of HTML in here, and they've given you a little bit of CSS, but they don't know that that Keegan Young has already gone through Muroc's HTML and CSS book. So when they do stuff like this and they talk about what a form is, you know this stuff already. So unless you feel the need, I don't feel the need to go over that kind of stuff with you. Is that okay? All right, so the HTML5 controls, these are the new things. I know we've looked at some of these, okay? Instead of saying input type equal text, when you say type equal email, it makes sure that what you put in there is a well-formed email address. All right, URL, same kind of thing. Typically with a URL, they want either http:// or https:// for something like that. Tel is a telephone number. All right, notice what it says. No validation is done by the browser. But hey, I know you've seen this where you look up Pizza Hut. All right, and you find the one, let's say, that's in Lake St. Louis. And you look, and there'll be a hyperlink in there. And that hyperlink will say, telephone them. You click it, and boom, you can make a phone call. That's the kind of thing they're talking about here. All right, numbers, you can give maximum and minimums. It gives you a box, a text box, and it's got, let's see if we can find one here. You know what a spinner is? So if I go out, if I say I want to, of course I don't want to do that. If I come in here and say, I want to print this. So I do a Control P. And this is a spinner where I can say how many copies I want. So notice it's 1, but I could do more if I wanted to, type of thing. All right, that's a number field. Now I can still override it. I can set a minimum of 1 and a maximum of 10. I can still come in there and override it like that. You know what I'm saying? Range, as it says, I can put an upper and lower range. Dates will bring up what's called a date picker. We've looked at that already. Time will do the same kind of thing. All right. Autofocus says when the form is loaded, where do you want the cursor to go? Typically, it's the first field. Doesn't have to be, but it usually is. Placeholder, you know what placeholder text is. That's placeholder text, that gray stuff. And as soon as you start typing in it, boom, it changes, goes away. All right. Features for validation. We've looked at most of these already. Required, you know what it is. What title does is it gives a tooltip. So if you put your mouse over the field, it'll explain it. Why do you do that? You do it again. A lot of times that kind of thing is done for people who are blind. All right. Or if they're not blind, legally blind. Legally blind means you have 25% or less of your sight, I believe it is. All right. Patterns, you can use what are called regular expressions or regexes. We've looked a little at that. We might look a little more at that. No validate, notice what it says. It tells the browser it shouldn't validate the form. By default, when you validate, it validates it on the client with JavaScript. If I say no validate, it says, you know what, forget about doing it here. Send it off to a server someplace. Let them validate it so you can check to make sure that's working okay. And autocomplete, maybe I showed you this. You bring up a form. If I type in Jeff, if I filled in the form before, it'll automatically show what's in those other columns. You can turn that on or off. When you're testing, it's nice to have it on. After you've got it tested, typically you turn it to off. You would typically use this if you've already checked all of your stuff on the client using JavaScript. You want to make sure it gets sent to the server anyway. Just bypass and make sure everything works or doesn't work when you send it to the server. Also, you can use it if you know it is possible to disable JavaScript. You can go in through any browser and disable it. So if you did a no validate, you'd be saying, hey, you don't have it working anyway. So that's what I'm going to do. All right. Using jQuery to work with forms. I'm not going to read a bit of this, but hopefully you can look, colon checkbox would be for checkboxes. Colon password for password fields, etc. So you can go in and you can provide on here using jQuery any kind of checks you want. Now, I could make a really, really complex form and put 15 fields in it and have you check all those. I'm not going to do that. But there probably will be a simple form on your next test that I'll ask you to do some validation for using jQuery. All right? You already know what val is. We already talked about this in the last chapter. I already showed you what trim is. So those things aren't new. You already know what that stuff is and what that stuff does. All right? So here's different things. I literally, you know what focus and blur are, right? We talked about that before. If I've got a field that's asking you, if it's a required field, and I ask you, how much money do you make a year? All right? Now, you don't typically see that, but let's just say I did have that. And you either left it blank, you were in that field and you left it blank, or you put in something illegal, and then you clicked on another field, I could check and literally send you right back to that field again. So I can do data validation to make sure you do things in the way I'm telling you they should be done. All right? So we've looked at these. Hopefully these all make sense to you. Okay? I mean, so change means that, for example, you had a drop-down list with states, and I put in Alabama and I changed it to Missouri. That's a change event. All right? Select, that's when you put something into a text box or into a text area. Submit is when you click the submit button. That's it. So here's an application that uses JavaScript. All right, so what do they have here? That's the form. All right. So, I mean, look at what we have in here. Must be a valid email address. Must be 6 or more characters. It's required, and if you did put it in here and they didn't match, it would say the passwords must match. All right. Membership, same kinds of stuff. All right. So I think you could create that form without any problems. You could do the HTML to create it. All right. And then it says here some of the JavaScript. This can get lengthy. All right. So what is this saying? If the radio button equals which button you checked, what does that mean? Did you check individual or did you check corporate? Again, most often with radio buttons, it's something like gender. Doesn't have to be, but normally it's something like that. That's it. Didn't even take as long as I thought it would. Now, so again, what we'll do next week is I will have us create a form. It won't have everything in the world on it, but it'll have, I don't know, maybe a dozen fields or something. We'll do it 3 ways. We will do it once. We could do it 4 ways. Once with no validation, that's kind of silly. So we'll put in automatic HTML form validation, required and stuff like that. Then we'll do it again with just JavaScript, not jQuery, just regular JavaScript. Then we'll do it again with jQuery. All right. And if you understand that, I won't make you do all 3 for the test, but I'll have you create a similar type of form. You will create the form. And then I'll say, do all of the form validation using jQuery. All right. The last thing I'm going to tell you about this is, and I just want you to be aware of this. Where is it? I'll have to find it. But jQuery has this built-in form validation plugin. If you go out here, you don't have to do this, but if you did, They have this video. It's about 13 minutes long, I believe. You literally can set it up to have jQuery do things for you where you have to write almost no code. So, well, geez, then I'm going to do that. It's boxy or kind of unorthodox to use it, but it's not bad. All right, so we might look at that next week. I don't know. All right, you okay with everything? Mm-hmm. All right.
The only thing I